Hi there, it's Michelle Patterson, and you are with The Real Share. We're doing our daily huddle, and I'm here with Lisa Manyon, who has been a friend of mine for over a decade. And we've done some massive, massive events together: California Women's Conference, Oregon Women's Conference. I mean, you name it, we have done it together. And we've also done a couple other things together, and that is the joys and the blessing of cancer. And we're going to be talking about that and how Lisa has owned her wellness and how she showed up and how she's made that part of her journey and wants to really share with our community how she was able to navigate through a very, very tough situation. And she, like me, would not trade that blessing for anything. I'm going to share with you a little bit about her background. She is the business marketing architect and president of Right On Creative. You can find her. So rightoncreative.com. She pioneered the 3-step challenge, which is challenge, solution, invitation, communication framework to create marketing messages with high integrity by focusing on passion points. Her strategies are known to create $1 million results. I know that because I've worked with her and she's been part of the companies that I have spearheaded and worked with, and does phenomenal, phenomenal work. She is a cancer thriver who believes in healing with love. She is the co-author of the #1 international best-selling book, The Silver Lining of Cancer. And she shares her personal story, journal prompts, and inspiration to help you redefine your relationship with self, health, and wealth via spiritual sugar. I love that, Lisa. Spiritualsugar.com is a site that you have. I want to talk about that. Let's start there. And what is that site set up for?
Sure. Well, it's been a work in progress. And of course, as you and I have shared kind of behind the scenes before, we couldn't just go through receiving a cancer diagnosis and heal ourselves, right? We had to create something that would give back to the world. And that's really what Spiritual Sugar is all about. So I'm going to be collecting stories of other women who have healed with love, and men too. I don't want to exclude men, but do work primarily with women, so that we can share alternative ways of healing, because there are ways that we can own our wellness, that we can take charge of our own health, that we're not really being taught unless we seek it out ourselves, as you and I both know. So that's what that's all about. People can zip over there and check it out. And if you have a healing story, you can submit it. And I'll feature them both on the website, but also I plan to do a compilation book too, so that we can get this out in the hands of more people.
So, two things. One is, I love that you brought up Own Your Wellness, because that's something that came up. In fact, I want to give a shout out to Carolyn Matthews, because I ended up having that as part of my signature. She goes, Michelle, you keep bringing that up. Every time you get up and speak, I would find myself saying to women, and this is pre-diagnosis, but I would find myself saying, we need to own our wellness. The days of having a doctor are over. This is really about creating a team approach and having your wellness team family that you can really tap into and find out what are the solutions that are available right now on the planet. And you were instrumental in helping formulate and put that together with the last company that Kim and I had put together, called My Jane, and have done, again, numerous projects. But I feel like you, out of all the individuals that I've worked with over the years, really have been able to capture my true essence of this desire to contribute and to help women, specifically women, find resources that are available out there. And we connected right away because you were on that same path.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember when Carolyn was like, Michelle, you've got to own this. Own your wellness is you. And it's so true. And it really segued so beautifully into your message that you've had all along. I mean, even prior to your healing journey that you're on right now, but you've been stepping up and really championing women for as long as I've known you. The California Women's Conference, the Women Network, everything that you've done has been all about helping people be better together. And I love that.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride, and It's more fun too. I mean, we have laughed our ass off. We've come together. I mean, there's been some times where it's like you can't write some of the stuff,
No, no, we can't.
and then we come up with these amazing ideas. I mean, I look back and I think about the different campaigns that we've done, the sleep campaign, the other one, the love the one you love. I mean, I would come up with these harebrained ideas and then I would call you and be like, all right, Lisa, this is where we're headed. What do you think? And you were right on it.
I'm like, yep, that's what we're doing. This is what we need to do to spin that just a little bit. But yeah, it's so fun. And when you work with teams that are aligned and women who are really, really doing their work from the heart and soul, it makes a big difference. It really, truly does. And you can tell when you're aligned. And I talk about this in my work a lot through Right On Creative about being energetically aligned, but it carries over into spiritual sugar, into everything. Because if you're not really operating from your core values, and really, really owning your integrity as well as your wellness, then you're really missing the mark. And also, I believe that will come back around to bite you, right? If you're not walking your talk and if you're not doing everything that you can do to be the best version of yourself, then I think you're doing a disservice to the world. Now, I don't think either of us are doing that because we've had to step up and own everything and really take a deep look at like why are we on these healing journeys? What did we do to contribute to all of this even manifesting? And how can we be an example to show others that there are ways to question everything, and you can't trust just one opinion. You need to get multiple opinions, and if something feels off, it probably is. So follow your gut instinct and move forward. And again, I always say question everything, and I do think I'm a little bit of a pain, but it's like, look, I want to know. I'm a researcher. I'm inquisitive. I need to know all of the facts, and I want to know what we can do to not only be as healthy as possible, but to help other people do that very same thing.
Do you remember the conversation that we had? I called you. I can tell you exactly where I was sitting. But I was facing the door and I was sitting by the window in my desk. And we had just launched My Jane. And I thought, okay, I need to call Lisa. I want her on this project. And I had just started the role of chief experience officer. And I called you up and started sharing with you, this process, what I was going through. And it was it was the first time that you had shared with me your journey with cancer.
Yes, I remember it exactly because it was so funny because I remember you saying, well, so I'm just not sure how familiar you are with the cannabis space. And I laughed and I said, well, first of all, I grew up in Humboldt County, California. And then, second of all, throughout my healing journey, and I was able to share with you what had happened with me from being misdiagnosed to being told that I had an abscess tooth to finding out that I had a very fast growing, rare, and aggressive tumor in my throat. Um, to healing with love. And part of that journey was cannabis. I used cannabis to help heal that. And so we immediately just clicked and we're like, okay, great. Once again, we hadn't talked for a while, but we're always on these parallel paths. And so it was just a natural fit to pop in. And of course, there were tears. That happens. It might even happen while we're going through the motions here today. But yeah, it was just so beautiful. And
I had not even been diagnosed yet.
I know because
So we were talking about,
I
yeah.
still remember when we had that conversation. There were lots of tears, and I was like, "Hey!" And as soon as I could, I sent you all of the resources that I had uncovered because I had to do my own diligence, and this is one of the things that I really want people to latch onto and pay attention to. Had I just listened to the traditional Western medicine communities, including the person who misdiagnosed me, I would not be sitting here today having this conversation. And that's not an exaggeration. And I do get very emotional about that because had I not been me and the person who questions everything, then I would have just went on my merry way. Oh, okay, yeah, it's just an abscess tooth, but I felt it growing in my throat. I actually journaled about it. I felt it expand and spider out and grow. And that's the strangest feeling. But when you're in tune with your body, you can tell when something's off and you have to push it. And I still remember the doctor saying to me, because I kept pushing it, she put me on some antibiotics and thought it was just like an infection, an abscess tooth, and I had to fly to LA for business. And while I was there, my body was rejecting the antibiotics because it was already trying to heal itself and fight off the cancer that was growing in me, which I didn't know what it was, but I knew something was happening. And luckily I was at my aunt's because I was laid out for a day. I couldn't even get out of bed. I was like, there's something really wrong. And I'm going to spare you the details of all of the different symptoms that were going on, but my body was just trying to get my attention. So, when I finally got back and I went back to the doctor and I said, look, something's going on. And I was having some acid reflux and some other things. And I mentioned that. She's like, okay, we'll get you some medicine for that. And I'm like, no, that's a self diagnosis. I want to know what the root cause is and what's going on. And she kept asking me, well, what do you think it is? And I didn't know. I really didn't know. And the last thing on earth that I ever thought it might be was cancer. And I remember so distinctly her looking at me and saying, well, do you think it's cancer? And I was livid. I hadn't even, that hadn't crossed my mind. I, I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not a medical professional. I haven't gone to med school. That kind of precludes me from being the person to diagnose anything here. That's kind of why I'm here. And that's when I knew I needed a new physician. And you can certainly fire your physicians. You can find someone else who's going to listen to you, because I had to listen to my body and got a referral to an ear, nose, and throat specialist. And by the time I got in with him, I first started feeling symptoms in March of um, 2017. So when I finally got to the ENT in April, towards the end of April, um, he said, we've got to go in and do a biopsy, because he did a scope and I had a tumor the size of a walnut in my throat. It was growing rapidly and it was cutting off my airway. And so thankfully that happened. And meanwhile, I was doing a lot of research and I found a book that I referred and sent to you, actually, after Michelle, you shared what was going on with you. And I said, you've got to have this book because it is really pretty amazing. It's from Dr. Kelly Turner, and she was originally she was a cancer counselor, and she kept seeing all these things that people call spontaneous remission. And she's like, they're not spontaneous. People are doing something. So she identified the 9 key areas that people and things that people were doing to course correct their health. And what's really fascinating is a lot of them are really spiritual, and a lot of
That
them.
book changed my outlook when I saw that. And we're going to get into what those 9 things were, but it's not the 9 things that you think you would hear. So tell us what those were.
Yeah, so I'm not going to remember all 9, but I'll tell you what I did. I embodied the whole thing. And the big thing is it's really about tapping into your spirituality and your faith. It's about being in nature and exercising. It's about eating the right foods to fuel your body, right? I realized at that time, clearly I had manifested this cancer for a reason. And part of it was that I wasn't taking that great of care of myself. I thought I was. I was doing what I thought I needed to do. But the truth of the matter was I was overweight. In fact, technically obese, although I carried it well. And when we look at that, that's pretty embarrassing to claim. And so I started eating really well, drinking filtered water and doing only organic foods, and dropped almost 40 pounds in less than a year. And people say to me, well, Lisa, you got sick, so you lost weight. No, I got healthy, so I lost weight. Actually, cancer made me healthier than I have ever been in my life. And that's kind of wild, right? But that book was my playbook. I have it on audio. I have it, the hard copy, and I read it and I listened to it over and over. And I would play it at night and listen to it even while I was sleeping, because it seeps into your subconscious, and really started, you know, doing everything that I could to take control of my life. And through that, I chose to do a lot of natural healing, sound sound healing, and as you know, singing bowls. You have singing bowls as well, and things like that. Lots of meditation, of course, lots of prayer and faith. And thankfully, I'm here today to talk about it. And I didn't do chemo or radiation. That was something that was brought up to me, and I absolutely knew that I wasn't going to do that. And after all of the research that I did and finding out some of the interesting ties and kickbacks and things like that that we don't even want to know are happening, but are happening in the medical profession, I thought, no, that's not for me.
Wow. I I want to talk about some of those things because I think you and I both had this aha moment when we were going through our healing journey. One of which was being told I had 90 days to live, and then finding out that the doctor who told me that was getting 30% commission off of every chemo treatment that I would have gone on. And I'm like you, I haven't done chemo, I haven't done radiation. I am not opposed to it as much as after I did my research and really started looking into it, it wasn't that next step for me. I felt like there was a lot of other things that I needed to do before I got to that step.
I agree with that, and I know that there are some people who it's really worked well for. I mean, the co-author, well, the person who spearheaded the Silver Lining of Cancer, my dear friend Tracy Eman, she's a big part of the Women's Speakers Association as well. She did some traditional therapies that worked. And so I'm not saying it can't work, but what I am saying is we all have to make our own choices. And one of the things, people will come to me and they'll want to know exactly what I did because they want to do that same thing. And what I share with people is, listen, there's over 100 different types of cancer. Every person's body and metabolism and makeup is completely different. So while I can share some of the things that I did, there's no guarantee that that's going to have the same results for anyone because it's so individualized. Now, if it was that easy, we would have a blanket cure for everything. But unfortunately, there's a bunch of different factors that cause cancers. Not only our environmental impacts and the food that we're eating that isn't even really food, but is actually poison. Um, and also, some of it is psychological and emotional and pent up emotions, which people do not realize can cause illnesses within your body.
Well, and that's why I was so amazed is out of the 9 things, it actually was very comforting to see that I could do. I mean, it was like one of them was related to um, therapy, a drug, taking something along those lines. Eight of those 9 were all things that we absolutely could do on our own, whether it was just releasing, trauma, past trauma and stress. And I felt very empowered, and I felt like I was owning my wellness because I could do something about my environment. I could do something about the stress that I was allowing into my internal ecosystem. I had I could do something about it, and that felt good. Felt really good.
It really did. I mean, I really, like I said, I used that book as a playbook. I read it. I said, all right, let's do this. I went out and bought myself a Berkey water filter. I only drink filtered water, and I stopped doing that time. I quit. I joke that I quit my 4 favorite food groups: coffee, wine, chocolate, and cheese, right? Like, I guess they're not really food groups, but for me, that was a big part of my life. I mean, I write about wine. I love wine. But wine immediately metabolizes into your system into sugar. And so I had to be careful about that, and really look at everything I was putting in my body. And so I quit all of those things cold turkey, which at one point I thought that alone would kill me, but it didn't. In
And
fact, I
then the
got
same. I forgot that you and I mean, we did the same thing. It was like cold turkey. I had already given up drinking. I had already given up wine prior to that, so that was good. But let's talk about this: is sugar. I mean, people don't realize carbs are sugar. Even getting carbs, and I've also dropped, 60 plus pounds, and I'm doing a treatment out of Germany that also really just keeps my metabolism going. And so we've since recently decreased that back down because I was dropping so much weight. But when you are eating healthy and eating everything organic and greens and no sugar, I mean, no sugar. I mean, I feel like $1,000,000. I feel so, so healthy. I have more energy than I ever have. It's just
it's
been awesome in that regard.
when we fuel ourselves with great food, it's amazing. I mean, I'm lucky. I live in beautiful, magical Ashland, Oregon, and we have some of the best farmers markets. In fact, I was just at the market today. I went down and got my hemp milk latte. So every once in a while, I do have a coffee now. But I do everything I can to keep my body very alkaline, and that means fresh veggies, fresh fruits, and a lot of juicing as well, right? To keep me really just in tip top shape. And I do. I feel better than I've ever felt before.
I mean,
And you
you
come
look
to,
good before, but you look vibrant now. I mean, you could tell your skin. I mean, you're glowing. And by the way, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday too. It's your
thank
birthday month.
you. It is
So
my birthday month. I
happy
know. I
birthday.
know. Rolling into 51. So
Oh,
just glad to be here to tell about it, right? And the reason that is because I took control of my life. I could have easily not been here. And I can see how many people, when they are faced with a diagnosis, lose hope and don't have the resources to move forward, which is why I'm so excited about the directories that you're putting together to help people tap into these different resources that they can access and to empower people to know like we have a choice. We can do our own due diligence. We can grab one book and it can change our lives, save our lives, basically. We can learn about what's really going on in the medical system. And one of the things that people ask me about that is, well, aren't you really furious with the person who misdiagnosed you? And I said, I'm really not. I don't want this to be any kind of a witch hunt or anything like that. What I know to be true is that for the most part, in many areas, our medical system is broken. And there's a lot of really great doctors, but also they're operating under some very stressful situations. Like, for example, they can only have, X amount of minutes with a patient. And so when we're pushing people through like that, how could you really truly give an accurate diagnosis, right? It's just fascinating to me to look at. So at first, I really did want to be super mad and project everything onto her. I'm human, but I'm like, you know what?
it's not going to
She's
help.
working, not going to help. She's working in a broken system. She feels really bad about this, I'm certain, but it's okay. I just need someone else to take care of me. I need to take care of myself, and I need to continue to find the right team. And thankfully, living in Oregon, we have OHSU, so Oregon Health and Science University here. And it's a teaching hospital. So anytime anyone is diagnosed, if you have an opportunity to work with a teaching hospital, they're on the cutting edge of everything. No pun intended, that's where I had my surgery. But luckily, the surgeon there had been doing this type of surgery for a very long time. So I had what's called a transoral robotic surgery, where they went in through my throat, through my mouth, and took the tumor and all of the margins out. And they also, you can't really see it, but there's a slight scar here where they went in too and took out about 12 to 14 lymph nodes to ensure that it hadn't jumped the barrier, the cancer hadn't jumped the barrier, and thankfully it hadn't. So we were able to contain all of that. I was in the hospital for 6 days. I was on feeding tube. They said I was going to have to go home with a feeding tube, and I said, no, I'm not, because there's no way. Like, it's not my thing, not going to do that. So I made
Not
sure,
happening.
right, not happening. I made sure that my friend was smuggling me in some essential oils and some green drink smoothies, and I made sure that I was able to eat so I wasn't on a feeding tube. But an interesting thing about the feeding tube is those the stuff that they feed you, I don't even know for sure what it is, but it's full of sugar. So they couldn't figure out why my blood sugar kept spiking. And I'm there on like the heaviest narcotics you can imagine. And I'm like, well, guys, I don't eat sugar. You're pumping me full of sugar. This is what's happening. Like, my body is rejecting it. It's not used to that anymore. So it's so fascinating, the disconnect between health and wellness and healthy eating and the medical profession, because the medical peeps stay in their lane. They're brilliant, they're great at what they do, but they've only had 1 to 2 weeks of nutritional education throughout their entire training. That's kind of crazy.
It
So,
is.
yeah.
What's so crazy too is when you start finding this out and you start peeling back the covers and looking at how broken the system is. I mean, I called you. I was like, oh my gosh, like I had no idea that it was as broken as it is,
No,
to
I
the
mean,
point where there's no, I mean, it's literally, you're given three options. You have chemo, radiation, surgery. I wasn't a candidate for surgery because it had spread so many places. So mine had jumped over the barrier. And in some ways I think back and I think, you know what, that probably saved my life, because the option that they had was to do the highest form of chemo. That's what the solution was for me. And it was like, wait a minute, I want to help my immune system. I want to do everything I possibly can to really help, feed my immune system. And that's when I started looking at everything out there, whether it was singing bowls. You talked about the essential oils. I'm doing that with Young Living. I got like, and I love it. I mean, I could feel a noticeable difference when I get done versus, and again, because I'm not on any drugs, I'm not on any, I mean, so my body really, really navigates towards these healing modalities that are available out there.
Absolutely. And I've replaced like the fancy perfumes that I used to wear because they're full of chemicals with essential oils. That's what I wear now. And they're also healing me at the same time as opposed to poisoning me and smelling beautiful, right? So there's so many things that we don't even think about, that we don't even consider. And one person once told me, and I don't remember who it was, or I would totally give them credit, but if you wouldn't eat it, don't put it on your body. So you're looking at, even the shampoos that you're using, even all of these things, if they're not natural, they're putting toxins into your body in
I
some
love that for a title. I think that should be the title of this episode. If you wouldn't eat it, don't put it
on your body.
on your body. And let's talk about that, because people, I don't think, realize is that our skin, I mean, it's our largest organ. So when we do put things on our skin, I mean, you talk about uh, deodorant and how,
Yeah.
what's in your deodorant that you're putting on. And for me, I had the cancer actually spread over to my lymph nodes, under my arm. I don't know, was that because of the deodorant that I was using? Could be. And
Right.
so I had to do a complete overhaul. And what we did was we set up our home to make it a healing home. So we made it where it was toxic free. Everything that was underneath the sink, all makeup, everything came out. I mean, if it wasn't something that I can, eat, then I'm not going to put it on my body, because it's the same thing. It's going into my body.
Yeah, and it is. People just don't think about it because we trust and we blindly follow, right? That if this is something that's being marketed, and yes, this is a marketer saying this, then it must be true, which isn't absolutely true at all, or that it must be safe, not true at all. I mean, even the FDA, we have to look at some of the things that they're approving because they're not good for us. I mean, I've been told, don't, shop when you're at the grocery store in just the produce aisles. Everything else really isn't food. And that's not completely true because some canned foods are definitely, veggies and things like that are real foods. But any of that processed stuff that isn't really good for us, if you can't pronounce the ingredients, probably shouldn't be eating it. Probably wasn't actually intended for people to eat in the first place. So, I've really had to look at a lot of that, especially with my marketing and advertising background, and think about, oh my gosh, what can we do to also change this industry to educate and to help people market with integrity and to let people know what's really being sold, right? There's so much smoke and mirrors in the industry that it breaks my heart. And that's kind of one of the reasons. And it was prior to my healing with love journey, of course, but that I started teaching marketing with integrity because we don't have to poke at the pain points. We can actually paint a picture of possibility and share from the heart with integrity based on our values the real solutions that we have to make a difference in the world. And we can change the world just by doing that.
I think too, it's just one step at a time, having the conversations. We talk about the real share, coming to the table. I know for me, I did not know that cancer, anybody that was going on to chemo, that the person that was prescribing chemo would get back pay or commission off of that prescription for chemo.
The research that I uncovered is that chemo is the only drug that the referrers get 100% of the markup on. So it has a very high markup value. And, there's good people and there's bad people. And I'm just going to leave it at that. And there's people who will help you make really good decisions for yourself based on what they know is going to help you as an individual. And then there are people that are really ingrained in the system that are going to do exactly what they're told. And in
Don't you
some,
think it's a conflict of interest too? I mean, For me,
Yeah, I
it's like,
totally do. I mean,
it's a direct conflict.
yeah, and I also uncovered, and I learned about this in a documentary called The Truth About Cancer, where not only do doctors get 100% markup on what they prescribe from the chemo, but in some states, it's apparently illegal not to prescribe chemo and radiation, and they can lose their license.
Well, you hear horror stories of, families that are bringing their child in who has been recently diagnosed with cancer, and the kids are at risk from being taken if they don't go along with the chemo treatment.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, again, I know that chemo can work. I know people who have successfully had low doses and are fine. And for me, I think it's a matter too of knowing your body and tapping into what you think will work well for you. So I knew I needed to build my immune system up as well. That was what was really clear to me. I also got, get a little woo woo. I got a divine download, and I believe it was directly from God that said, "You're going to heal this with love." And I thought that sounds way better than the alternative. Let's do that. And and I prayed a lot about it too. And I said, great, show me what I'm supposed to do with all of this then, and how can I help others? Right. And so then my friend Tracy nudged me to share the Healing with Love story in The Silver Lining of Cancer. And that's been very well received. I did a book reading at the local bookstore here. They carry it at the local bookstore as well. And it was a packed house. There wasn't even room for everyone to sit. And the most interesting piece of it was the Q&A section after the fact. And I wasn't really talking about, in my chapter in the book, I don't really talk about everything that I did to course correct. But people were asking really, really good questions. And they brought up, well, did you use cannabis? And I hadn't spoken about that publicly until that day on the spot. And I'm like, well, yes, I did. And so when they started asking, well, do you recommend that we do that? I'm like, I'm not a doctor. I can't prescribe anything for you, but I do know that I used a healing salve to help heal my external scars. And I also used something that's very close to a Rick Simpson oil that helps me do internal healing. I mean, the cannabinoids are meant to work with our body. And if we do the research and we look at these natural healing gifts that are God given, then we can do a lot to really I'm gonna use your phrase, own our wellness, right?
Yeah. I love that you bring up cannabis too, because you know how I feel about cannabis. And especially, I mean, my dad was a former narcotic agent. That was his
Yes.
profession. So cannabis was just like, no, no way. And that's what happened is that people would come to the California Women's Conference and want to exhibit their cannabis company at the conference. And I thought, what is going on here? The more that I learned, the more I was fascinated with how it helps with sleep, pain, stress, anxiety. Had no idea that I would be using it, for cancer. And my story. I mean, I took a PET scan, and then 8 weeks later, after using a cannabis protocol, so just a tincture that went right under my tongue, 8 weeks later, the original tumor shrunk 40%, and what had metastasized shrunk 52%. In 8 weeks, I wasn't doing anything else except for changing my diet, meditating, and doing a cannabis protocol.
Yeah, the scar on my neck when they went through, they it created nerve damage. I mean, it went through nerves, right, to get in there and to pull out those lymph nodes. And so they told me that I wouldn't be able to put an earring in without looking in the mirror because I'd poke a new hole because I wasn't supposed to feel my whole face, my ear, all the way down into my chest and my neck. And I started using a 100% organic um, cannabis and coconut oil salve and putting that on there. And I have more feeling than they anticipated. Now, can they say it was from that? They don't really know, but I believe that it definitely did help with that healing piece as well. So I am a big, big believer. And it's interesting for me to see how now cannabis is really being shown in its true light of being a medicinal healing property.
And it's
Especially,
viewed now as an essential.
well, it is, which is amazing to me. I was like, look at this, because seriously, I grew up in Humboldt County, California, known for having really fantastic cannabis, but it was clearly on the black market, for many, many years. And although I knew people definitely who were using it for medicinal purposes, There's always people using it for recreational, to each their own. But my stance is I am 100% behind it being legalized both statewide and federally to help with the medicinal properties. Absolutely 100%.
You'll love this. So my oncologist, Dr. Greg Anguis, I want to give a shout out. So he is over at Hoag Hospital in Newport. And if you could imagine, I'm on the phone with my father who is visibly, upset. It was his birthday. And he kept saying, he goes, Michelle, when are you going to start a treatment? When are you going to start doing a treatment? And I'm like, Dad, I've started a treatment. I've started a cannabis protocol. And there's my dad in tears, crying. So when we had the doctor's appointment to go over and review the PET scan results, and if you can imagine, you've got my sister who is, she's on the phone, she's FaceTiming. You've got my husband, my mom, my dad. I mean, we're all there. And he comes out and he starts saying, he goes, we don't see results like this. He goes, we need her to keep doing exactly what she's doing with the cannabis. That is working. And it was surreal because I expected to have results, but not 52% reduction in the tumor. That was
And that's so amazing. And
surreal.
also, it's a testament to Michelle, to you, and to your positive attitude, and to everything that you've done to pour into making your home a healing sanctuary and believing that there is hope. And that's something else that I wanted us to talk about. We've heard about placebos where people will give you a sugar pill or something like that to in a blind study or something to tell you that you're being cured of something, and it works even though it's a sugar pill. But there's something that's the exact opposite, and it's called a nocebo. And that's where they give you absolutely no hope, or they prescribe an expiration date, much like you were given the 90 days. And what that does to a person psychologically and emotionally and physically is devastating. And in fact, there's been studies that have been done that show people have been misdiagnosed, given an expiration date, and actually passed on that expiration date because they believed they were going to die. And I just want to stress this because the power of our mind, our meditation, our thoughts, and everything that we put into our body can help heal us, period. And that's why I am so excited that you chose to heal with love too. You're like, okay, what can I do to love me more? What can I do to pour love into myself and to make sure that, yeah, I'm trying these natural protocols and I'm documenting all of this to help others so that, you know, there is hope because I'm just saying, there's so many people when you hear, when I was told after I had the biopsy, and I can't remember if he said you have cancer or it is cancer, but those three words, whatever combination they were, I really don't wish upon anyone. But at the same time, I just sat there and I was like, okay. And I thought to myself, well, all right, I know what I need to heal with love now, right? And even the ENT said, wow, you're taking this really well. I'm like, well, it was going to be one of two things, right? And I've been preparing. So either it was not cancer and just some weird random giant lump in my throat, or, it was cancer. And chances are, it was the cancer, and it was. And so he's been just a great champion. I go in and do for a while. I was going in every 3 months to do a scope. I go in every 6 months now. That's the only way they can check. They have to put a little camera down my nose. Not the most fun thing in the world, and just make sure that everything's clear there because there's no way to detect this with tests or anything. It's a very rare squamous cell carcinoma, and typically more men than women get this. And so that's also why I host a private Facebook group for women thrivers of squamous cell carcinoma so that we can, and specifically base of tongue, so that we can share our protocols and what we learned. And that's something that I started doing right away throughout the healing process as well, because I wanted to make sure that, first of all, I was getting information from other people because not all the doctors are sharing their information either. So we can connect dots that the doctors aren't even connecting because, first of all, patient confidentiality. How are they going to connect these dots? They can't share all of this with everyone else, right? So there really is a lot of due diligence and a lot of ownership that we can take on our own to get what we need and to support other people and helping with their healing too.
And I think the more that we can talk about these questions and not feel like we can't ask multiple doctors. And I mean, that's, my story with that diagnosis. I mean, it was, you have 90 days, to live. And that feeling of this flight and fright mentality that just comes over you. And Joe Dispenza talks about this, where you're not in the space of being creative at all. I mean, you're in survival mode. And so you are freaking out. And I thought, you know what? I am going to set it up where I've got this platform called The Real Share. We're doing a Made with Love directory where we can talk about this conversation and direct people there so that they can see hope and they can hear. So that way they have a place to go to. And I do not recommend going to the internet. That will freak you
Mm-mm.
out even more. And it really was me going and asking my friends and saying, who do you know that's a doctor that believes in integrative medicine, and doing my due diligence. I had 45 different doctor's appointments. I made it a game and I captured the whole journey, the whole process. But I was blown away at how it's so easy for us to want to take that shortcut and just take the pill and do the chemo or do, just because that's what everybody does. And my feeling is that, I believe that there is more options available that are out there instead of just the three that we've been mentioning. And I'm not opposed to chemo because I, like you, I've had other friends who have done all the other healing modalities. And when they've come back around to do chemo and radiation, it's actually insulated their bodies and protected them.
It's true, and also essential oils have been shown to really help with that, particularly frankincense. So people who are having chemo and having a lot of the nausea and everything, it helps with the healing properties. And
So
I
how do you use your frankincense? Because I have that set up right now in my diffuser,
yeah, so
my
I
Young Living
diffuse it. I
diffuser.
also I also made a oil with fractionated coconut oil and frankincense, and I can't remember, I think lavender and a few other oils that I put on my star too to help to do that. I also take it internally. Some people don't recommend that, but I took it internally, especially because it was in my throat. I was like, you know what? Look, if they wanted me to do chemo, which could potentially kill me, I don't think frankincense is going to kill me. Pretty sure it's not. So I still take it, and I still use it both topically and internally.
And tell me what your understanding is of the essential oils, because I think that that's one of the things that I was blown away at all the healing modalities that
Oh my
these
gosh!
oils did.
So I mean, it's again, it's a natural, God-given plant derivative healing agent, right? Or to promote your health. We have to be careful what we say about essential oils, but what I know is they make me feel better. They improve my well being, and I love them. I diffuse them all the time. I use them instead of perfume now. I actually am a doTERRA girl, so I use Elevation and Whisper as perfumes on a regular basis. Sometimes I blend them, I diffuse them. In fact, I need to order another diffuser because I just moved into a new house and now I've got two levels, so we need one for each level.
So let's talk about that a little bit too, because I'm just really getting into this. When you do have different levels, so I've got one next to my bed, I've got one in the living room. I mean, how do you what's the protocol for utilizing diffusers?
I try and keep one going throughout the day. I've got one here in my office. I was just diffusing balance and serenity together. It just depends on the day. I like to use peppermint and orange oils as well. And it really promotes a feeling of calm and well being for me. Also, it smells great, right? So if it's a natural mood enhancer and it can also make everything smell beautiful, why not? So I'm a big believer. I don't work it as a business. A lot of people do. I just love it and share it and say, look, guys, this is what I like. It helps me feel better. Try it.
That's great, though. I mean, but that's again. So let's talk about the singing bowls.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I love them, and I was going to Tibetan singing bowls. sessions. There was a wonderful woman who she's since closed her practice, which makes me really sad. But I started going to her sessions. They were hour-long sessions, and 20 minutes of sound bath therapy equates to like, I think it's like 2 to 4 hours of sleep, which is amazing. It just really regenerates your cells. So I had been going to her, and then she knew I was going to go have my surgery in Portland, and she sent me with a throat chakra bowl. It's a hand forged under the full moonlight, 7 metal alloy for all of your chakras to get even more woo woo for everyone who's into that. And I took it with me, and I played it before my surgery, and I had it in the room when we had to stay a week after before we traveled back to Ashland to make sure that everything was okay. And of course, I ended up buying the bowl because I fell in love with it. She was very smart. And then there's another. Right now, the sessions are not happening, but there's another singing bowl practitioner who does the crystal singing bowls. And our bodies are actually made up of crystalline substances. So the crystal singing bowls, those sounds help to recalibrate our DNA, actually, which is really a beautiful thing. So again, so relaxing. I've taken friends to those sessions with me, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I have never slept so good in my entire life." So that was just another one of those modalities. I also have little chimes that are chakra chimes that I play, that just the resonance and the vibration are healing tools. And sound has been a healing tool throughout the ages. Even singing is a healing tool. I mean, music, both of you and I love music, and you're the dancing queen. So
Isn't that so amazing though? Because I've got 4 bowls, and my son actually got me my first Tibetan bowl, and it was a little one, and then I've got one that's just huge, and I've got a heart chakra, and I've got like I said, four of them, 3 big ones, and it's the it's just an interesting sound that comes over, but that's what it's set up to do, is really recalibrate your internal system, your
yeah,
DNA, your cell system. And I get done. I mean, I feel relaxed. The other one that I want to talk about too is meditation.
yes.
I think that for me, if somebody were to say, Michelle, you can pick only one thing, what would you want to start with? And I would say meditation being the first, because I think for me, um, it really calmed me down. It let me be strategic in what my next step needed to be. I didn't feel like I was taking on the whole world. I really felt like I was tapping into this field of possibilities. Did you have that same experience? And were you doing meditation
Yeah,
frequently?
I actually participated in a stillness group where we would get together twice a month and just sit in silence and meditate and pour, receive love and pour love out into the world to elevate the vibration. So that's something that I did. But I also believe too, like for some people, they get anxious and they feel like just sitting there is very difficult. I believe that anything that you love can be a form of meditation. So I love to cook. Cooking really beautiful meals that are healthy and organic and compute is a form of meditation for me. Even
So
listening
for
to
me,
music.
I would rather speak to 10,000 people than cook a meal for 5. Not relaxing at all. But I totally get that, because I hear that from people where they'll say, painting, it makes me go to my happy place, or cooking, it's soothing. So
Yeah, and
that's great.
even walking in nature is meditation to me. I spend a lot of time in Lithia Park here in Ashland, and it's really beautiful. In fact, there's a gentleman who plays his cello in the park most days, and we've become friends. But throughout the healing journey, after I'd have an appointment, I would go to reground in Lithia Park because I needed to be around nature. And it just so happened almost every time he would be there playing, and I would go and listen to that music, and it would really just soothe me and heal me on the deepest level. And then when the book came out, The Silver Lining of Cancer, I took him a copy and I signed it, and wrote in there, you didn't know what was going on, but you were a big part of my healing journey, and your music was a big part of that. And he was like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea." And I'm like, well, I wasn't really announcing it. I was kind of in my own little world dealing with it.
You were very quiet. And I applaud you for that too, because I think that's something that everyone in owning their wellness needs to make a decision on how vocal they want to be about their healing journey. Is this something, what was the decision making that you had to keep it quiet?
It was really kind of divinely guided as well. It was like, keep it within your sacred sphere of influence. Because here's the thing, both of us have pretty big personas out there on social media and are connected with a lot of people. But not everyone we're connected with are part of our sacred sphere of influence or our champions for that matter. And so it was really important to me to make sure that only people who I knew would respect my decision to focus purely on healing with love and doing everything as naturally as possible and choosing only to do surgery because, everyone becomes an expert once you're diagnosed. And the truth is, we are the only person that are an expert on our own health, right? And we have to tap into what's best for us. And I didn't want to do that. I mean, I had people say, well, wasn't it difficult to, move through all of this financially? And, why didn't you do a GoFundMe campaign and all of that? And I'm like, look, this was a private thing. I figured it out. And I didn't want to do anything like that. And yes, one of the things that I'm really passionate about now too is encouraging women to really look at their wealth because they tell us to have, 3-month cushion in case of an emergency. Well, as you and I both know, even if you have insurance coverage, it only covers traditional things. It doesn't cover anything that's really contributing to your wellness. Other than my surgery, I must say that absolutely did for sure save my life. However, all of the organic foods, all of the alternative acupuncture and massages and things like that, singing bowl sessions were not covered, right? And so you really need to look at how you're going to take care of yourself on every level, and that's why it's so important to really get clear with yourself, get clear with your health, and get clear with your wealth, and start building it, not just making it and spending it. And that's been one of my biggest lessons because I'm really good at making it and spending it. And this was a wake up call for me to like, okay, there's some things I really need to look at and course correct too, because I don't want to ever be in a situation again where, luckily I have really fantastic friends and family who could help out. And that's an embarrassing place to be when you look at it, right? I'm being very real and raw and candid here to let people know that when you have a major diagnosis like this, even if you have decent amount of savings set aside, you're going to blow through that. And you're going to need some help and you're going to need some support. So just not that you're expecting something to happen or go wrong, but why not just have a really nice cushion there to take care of you no matter what happens?
And I think that goes along the same lines of also being your advocate and being your best friend and recognizing too that, okay, what is it that's going to cause me stress? And how can I not only alleviate that stress, but your job is to bring 100% joy into your life. It's not to show up for others, but it's to be able to go ahead and meet with them and say, okay, this is what I need. What is it that you need? And let's come together so that we can create a healthy healing process for not only myself, but for my family and whoever I'm interacting with. I think that's
Right.
so critical. Well, I have loved just, I mean, the hour went by like that, of course. Lisa, what is something that you want to share, just closing remarks? And I want to make sure that people know how to reach you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, just really question everything and trust your intuition. That's my big, what like people to take away. But also eat healthy. That's really it. Feed your body with pure foods. And you can find me at either rightoncreative.com or spiritualsugar.com. Reach out there. And there's resources, whether you want to learn how to market with integrity or you want to share your story about healing with love, because I'd love to hear from anyone who has also used some non-traditional modalities to, along with traditional too, that's fine. But I really want us to educate and help others learn how they can own their wellness and take care of themselves.
No, I think that's such a good message. And I know you and I are constantly sharing contacts, leads, but it's a matter of us coming together collectively. And I believe that individually, we don't have all the answers, but we come together collectively, we absolutely do. So, Lisa, thank you so much. We end this show with dancing, my favorite,
Yeah,
the
I
dancing
love it.
machine. And I would love to have you back on. The information you provided is so, so helpful. And just thanks for being such a dear friend all these
Thank
years.
you. I'm so glad we're here to share this journey together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see. All right.